Ubiquiti released this UCG Industrial Gateway just a few weeks ago, and part of their marketing included the ability to PoE power low Earth orbit satellite dishes such as this Starlink Mini. But how does that actually work? And is it worth buying this $600 gateway just for that feature? In this video, we're going to dig into the UCG Industrial. I'll give you a quick overview of its specs, and then we're going to do a deep dive into its Starlink capabilities. And it probably doesn't work the way you might think. Let's get started. We get questions about both Starlink and Ubiquiti all the time at Rogue Support. These two vendors have similar support services in that if there's a problem with a piece of gear, they will help you fix it or they'll replace it, but that's about where their help ends. If you need help actually designing your network or getting hardware from different vendors working together, or if you just have questions about best practice configuration settings, you're going to need an expert. And that's where the expert techs at Rogue Support come in. At Rogue Support, we have received over 400 5-star reviews from customers who are thrilled about how our techs have helped them out. So if you've been thinking about trying out Rogue Support to help dial in your network or troubleshoot a problem, don't take my word for it. Check out our 5-star reviews. Before we dig into this UCG Industrial, I want to let you know that I bought this unit with my own money. This cost me over $600 with shipping, and big announcement here, I have officially left the Ubiquiti Creator Program. So from this point forward, Ubiquiti will not be reviewing any of my videos ahead of time, and I have zero incentive to pull any punches, which is primarily why I'm getting to this particular gateway a few weeks late. I don't get any hardware sent to me ahead of time. This is the first industrial gateway model that Ubiquiti has ever released, and I do love to see them going in this direction with some of their gear. In their launch video, they show a bunch of different industrial form factor devices. So here we can see a bunch of switches and something in the back there with antennas sticking up. And being labeled industrial basically means that they've got a ruggedized form factor and they are fanless, which is why the whole case here is basically a big metal heatsink. And then fanless so that there's no way for dust to get in and gum up a moving part. They've also come up with this modular mounting system that I actually think is pretty cool. Both end caps on the gateway are removable. So here in this form factor, I've got this handle on top, and I've got the desktop stand on the bottom, but I can swap these out in order to wall mount or rack mount the gateway. One thing that I really don't like is this absolutely humongous power brick that it comes with, which is not only excessively large, but it's actually quite heavy as well. It's probably 3 or 4 pounds. Even though this is an industrial form factor, that's not to be confused with an outdoor rating. There is no ingress protection rating in the tech specs, so this should not be placed outside directly in the elements, but it could probably be just fine inside a NEMA enclosure. The operating temperature of this gateway is -22 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit or -30 to 50 degrees Celsius. So this does have integrated Wi-Fi, and as we can see on the top here, we've got a couple of stubby little Wi-Fi antennas. Now these are removable and you can swap them out with the included omnidirectional antennas if you need some additional range. Now in the announcement video, they also showed some sort of like super thin antennas being attached, but I couldn't find any info about those particular antennas on the website. So perhaps that's an accessory that's coming in the future, but if you have any information about that, let me know down in the comments. Taking a look at the back here, we do have a nice selection of ports. Starting with power, this comes with both a 54-volt DC barrel connector and also a 4-pin DC power socket, which very much reminds me of the way that Peplink has been supplying power to their gateways for years. It almost seems like Ubiquiti here is trying to go after the Peplink router market. For networking, we've got a 10 gig SFP plus WAN port, a 10 gig RJ45 WAN port, and a 2.5 gigabit RJ45 WAN or LAN combo port. We've also got another 3 2.5 gigabit LAN ports. Now, 2 of these LAN ports are PoE plus, and the other 2 are PoE plus plus plus, which are capable of delivering up to 90 watts per port of PoE output. This 10 gig RJ RJ45 WAN port is also PoE+++, and that's because one of the marketing points of this gateway is that it can power up low Earth orbit satellite dishes, and we're going to deep dive into that a little bit later in the video. Besides the networking, we've also got a micro SD card slot for UniFi Protect. The UCG Industrial can run the full suite of UniFi OS applications, including Protect, and this would be okay for like 1 or 2 cameras, but if you need more than that, you're gonna want a real NVR. It's just not a good idea to rely on a micro SD storage card for mission-critical surveillance cameras. And then down here, we've also got a couple of SIM card slots, which is an interesting choice because the device itself does not have any cellular antennas. If you want to use these SIM card slots, you have to additionally purchase the $400 UniFi 5G Max Outdoor. The idea being that if you have the UniFi 5G Max Outdoor outside and up on a pole somewhere, the SIM cards might be hard to get to, so instead you can run the SIMs off of this gateway here. Which, I don't know, I'm actually kind of on the fence about that feature because on one hand, in certain deployment scenarios, I can see that, having the SIM cards here locally and an external antenna up somewhere else can be useful. But like, how often are you changing out your SIM cards such that separating from the antenna is going to be a practical solution anyways? I would have much rather seen cellular antenna connectors right here on the UCG Industrial itself, and then you could simply wire up whatever antenna you want, and it would be much cheaper. Beyond a few quirks though, this is a really solid gateway with a nice selection of ports. But there's one more thing, and this is a point that was made by a buddy of mine, Jim the IT guy on TikTok. Go ahead and give him a follow if you like Ubiquiti stuff.
But there's also a massive disappointment with this, in that, why did we have to have the industrial version first? Where is the general version? And why didn't they do this sort of thing with the Dream Router 7? That sort of thing. This is one of the little frustrations, Ubiquiti, if you're listening. We don't need this in an industrial package. We need this in a business package first for small businesses. This for small businesses, this for home residential installs, for a lot of places would be absolutely phenomenal. It doesn't need the robustness.
So really good point. The only similar option to this device in Ubiquiti's current lineup is the Dream Router 7, which does have a single 10 gig SFP plus, and it does have a 2.5 gig RJ45 WAN port, but neither of those are PoE. And in fact, the Dream Router 7 only has a single 15.4 watt PoE LAN port. So it is much more limited in what it can power up. It would be amazing if they came out with a non-industrial version of this exact same gateway and then knocked the price down by at least $100. Maybe that's on the roadmap, I have no idea, but let's now shift to the Starlink capabilities of this gateway, because that's something that Ubiquiti is specifically using in their marketing. They even have a dedicated tab on the product page for LEO deployment. And what that shows is that, first of all, this only seems to work with the Starlink Mini dish, because the Starlink Mini is the only dish that has separate power and data inputs. All of the other dishes have an external router plus a proprietary PoE cable from the router to the dish. And that proprietary cable is needed because of the higher amount of power that those larger dishes need. So as far as I can tell, the only dish that you can use with the UCG Industrial is the Starlink Mini, even though it does seem to show 2 different sized LEO dishes in the announcement video, but those are just renderings, right? So who knows what that's actually supposed to mean. Regardless though, this does work to power up the Starlink Mini with PoE, but not directly. You have to have a gigabit PoE splitter in the mix. Now I bought this one here for just about $65, and what it does is it takes PoE power in and then outputs separate data and 24 volt DC power. The Starlink Mini can receive anywhere from 12 to 56 volts of input power, so this works pretty well. But if you're looking to buy one of these, make sure you get the 24-volt version, even though they do sell a little bit cheaper 12-volt versions as well. But 12 volts is going to be the bare minimum that you need to power the Starlink Mini, and if your power cable coming out of the splitter is too long, you're going to drop some of that voltage and you may drop underneath the Starlink's minimum power needs. So speaking of the power output, I bought this 3-foot 12-gauge cable that is made for Starlink. It cost me about 17 bucks. The barrel connector has these extra ridges so that it stays weatherproof or waterproof when it's connected to the Starlink. I am, however, using a standard Ethernet cable, but if you really wanted to keep everything watertight, you'd also want one of the proprietary Starlink data cables. And I will have all of the links to all of this stuff down in the description. I have personally verified that all of this works together. So with that being said, let's get it all set up.
Ubiquiti, UCG powers up your Starlink Mini Industrial Gateway. I know it's a great way. Get it today and it will be really great. Hey! Ubiquiti, UCG powers up your Starlink Mini Industrial Gateway. I know it's a great way. Get it today and it will be really great. Hey!
All right, so here's our setup. We've got this plugged into the 10 gig RJ45 WAN port. I could have also plugged it into this 2.5 gig port. That Starlink's never going to get anywhere close to either of those, so both of these ports will work just fine. And then I've got it wired up to this gigabit PoE splitter. Now this is just a gigabit, so again, we're still bottlenecking that connection, either the 2.5 or the 10 gig connection from the industrial, but Starlink Mini's never gonna get close to gigabit either, so this is perfectly fine, although they do make 10 gig PoE splitters just like this one, if you wanna pay a little bit extra. So this is PoE in from the industrial gateway, and then we've got data out, and then back here we've got a DC block that has power out, and it is powering up that Starlink Mini just outside my window here. So as you can see, everything is working well, and I do appreciate that Unify exposes some of the Starlink Mini's stats right here in the dashboard so that we can see obstructions and disk latency, as well as the Starlink firmware. One thing I have noticed is that there is a weird kind of like staticky crackling noise coming from that PoE splitter. Now I'm not sure if mine is just, defective or something, but it definitely doesn't give me the warm fuzzies. And that really kind of brings me to, I think, my whole point on this feature. It's cool that you can PoE power a Starlink Mini if you jump through a few hoops to set it all up, but what advantage does it give you over just using the Starlink Mini's power cord and a non-PoE data cable? If you could power the Starlink Mini directly without the PoE splitter in the mix, then I would say absolutely this is a great idea. But unless SpaceX comes out with a new model dish that only uses PoE, that's not going to happen. So what did we get then? We invested an extra 85 bucks for the PoE splitter and the power cable for what? Right? To create a more complicated setup than just using the included power cable and a separate data cable. It's not like the PoE splitter is weatherproof, so you can't have it outside, and yet it needs to be close enough to the Starlink Mini dish that it doesn't lose voltage through the power cable. I guess it means that if your Starlink Mini is a long way from power, like up on a roof or something, you could run a single Ethernet cable up to a weatherproof enclosure and then pop in the PoE splitter to get the power and data across the finish line. But let's also not forget that this only works with the Starlink Mini, which is a dish that's made to be portable. You're not typically going to see a Starlink Mini in a permanent rooftop type installation. For that, you're typically going to use the residential dish, which doesn't work with this PoE splitter. So I guess overall what I'm trying to say here is that while I appreciate this feature, I just don't think it's useful enough to cover most people's use cases for the Starlink Mini. And you're typically going to be better off just, using a separate power and data cable. Like in my own RV, when I go camping, I use the Starlink Mini, but I've got a 50-foot data cable and I've got a 50-foot power cable. It's not that tough to just drag both of those cables out to wherever I need to put the Starlink so that it has a clear view of the sky. But let me know down in the comments if you think that I'm wrong about that. To wrap this up, I do think that the UCG Industrial overall is a pretty solid product. It's definitely a robust industrial device with a nice selection of ports and features, but it's not without its quirks. You wouldn't want to run this as a serious NVR because it only has that micro SD storage. The SIM card slots that only work if you add in the extra $400 5G Max Outdoor device is a bit of a strange addition, and while I do think the UCG Industrial's ability to power up a Starlink Mini with its WAN port is cool, right? I mean, in the real world, it's only going to be super useful in a small percentage of deployments, and in most cases, it's going to be easier and cheaper to just run separate power and data out to the Starlink Mini. But that's just one guy's opinion, and if you have a different opinion, let me know down in the comments below. If you'd like to keep this party going, I have hand-selected a couple of videos on the right here for you to watch next. The top video is an overview of Project Nomad. That is my brand new project that lets you create an offline knowledge base of all the world's information with maps and local AI. And the bottom video is my recent look at the brand new Comet 5G KVM from GL iNet.